The courthouse doors swung open, their heavy oak frames creaking under the weight of years of trials, sentencing, and unshaken power. Judge Gerald Whitmore sat high on his bench, his presence looming over the courtroom like a god surveying his kingdom. He was a man feared by many, respected by some, but truly known by few. To the world, he was an enforcer of justice, a man of wisdom who upheld the law. But behind closed doors, he was something else entirely. Beneath his expensive robes and carefully chosen words lay a prejudice so deep, so ingrained, that it had turned his heart to stone. His rulings were often skewed. A young black man caught shoplifting, maximum sentence. A privileged white banker accused of embezzling millions. A slap on the wrist. He had the power to twist the law as he pleased, and he wielded it with pride. He believed himself untouchable. But fate has a way of humbling even the mightiest. The case that would shake the very foundations of his world was a simple one, at least on paper. Michael Carter, a 27-year-old black schoolteacher, was accused of assaulting a white businessman outside a bar. The evidence was weak, the witnesses unreliable, but to Judge Whitmore, none of that mattered. A black man accused of harming a white man? That was all he needed to hear. Michael stood before the judge, his hands trembling slightly as he held onto the wooden podium. He wasn't a criminal. He had spent his life shaping young minds, teaching children about equality, about the importance of standing up for what was right. And now, he was the one being crushed under the weight of a system designed to work against him. "I didn't do it, Your Honor," Michael said firmly. His voice was calm, but there was a fire behind his eyes, a fire that would not be easily extinguished. Judge Whitmore leaned forward, peering down at Michael as though he were an insect beneath his boot. "And yet, here you stand before me, accused. The law speaks for itself." The prosecutor smirked. The public defender, a fresh-faced young woman barely out of law school, fumbled with her notes. Michael's fate was already sealed. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. Guilty. As the verdict was read, Michael's mother let out a muffled sob. His students, sitting in the back of the courtroom, clutched each other's hands, their young faces etched with confusion and sorrow. How could a good man be punished for a crime he didn't commit? Judge Whitmore's gavel came down like a thunderclap. "Michael Carter, I hereby sentence you to 15 years in prison." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Michael's mother collapsed into her seat. The young teacher clenched his jaw, swallowing back the fury rising in his chest. He had always believed in the system. But now, standing on the receiving end of its cruelty, he felt that belief shatter into a million pieces. As he was led away in handcuffs, he turned and met Judge Whitmore's eyes. There was no hatred in Michael's gaze, only a quiet, unsettling certainty. "You may have the power now," Michael said softly, "but the truth has a way of coming out. One day you'll see." Judge Whitmore smirked. To him, it was nothing more than the defeated ramblings of another man whose life he had so easily destroyed. For a while, things continued as they always had. Judge Whitmore presided over cases, handed down his biased rulings, and lived in the comfort of his untouchable status. Until one day something strange happened. It started with a single letter, a neatly folded envelope left on his desk with no return address. Inside was a single sentence: "Justice is coming for you." He scoffed, crumpling the note and tossing it aside, probably the work of some disgruntled defendant. It wasn't the first threat he'd received, and it wouldn't be the last. But then came another, and another. Each letter always the same: "Justice is coming for you." No matter where he was, the messages found him, on his car windshield, slipped under his office door, even inside his own home. The once invincible judge began to feel the first whispers of fear. And then, the nightmares began. He would wake in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, the sound of a gavel echoing in his ears. He saw faces, faces of the people he had wronged, faces of men and women he had sentenced unfairly. Their eyes bore into him, accusing, demanding, and always, always, there was Michael Carter, standing in the shadows, watching, waiting. Judge Whitmore tried to ignore it. He buried himself in his work, silenced the fear with fine whiskey and expensive cigars. But his grip on power was slipping, and he could feel it. And then it happened. One evening, as he left the courthouse, he noticed a familiar figure standing near the steps. Michael Carter. The young man had been released early due to new evidence proving his innocence. The judge hadn't even been informed. Michael didn't say a word. He just stood there, staring. Judge Whitmore felt his throat go dry. For the first time in his life, he felt small, powerless. And then, Michael spoke. "Do you believe in justice, Your Honor?" Judge Whitmore turned away, hurrying down the steps. His heart pounded in his chest. He told himself it was just paranoia, that Michael was just another face in the sea of people he had ruled over. But deep down, he knew. Justice was coming for him. And this time, there would be no escape. Judge Gerald Whitmore was no stranger to fear. He had instilled it in countless people throughout his career. But this was different. This was a fear he couldn't control, couldn't sentence away. For weeks after his encounter with Michael Carter, paranoia took root in his mind. Every shadow seemed to move, every whisper seemed directed at him. He started seeing Michael everywhere, on the courthouse steps, outside his office window, even across the street from his favorite restaurant. It was impossible. Michael was free, yes, but what could he possibly do? Judge Whitmore was still a man of power, still protected by the very system he had manipulated for years. And yet, something was coming, and it was getting closer. The first real blow came in the form of an investigation. The State Judicial Commission had launched a probe into Judge Whitmore's rulings, citing multiple complaints of racial bias and judicial misconduct. It seemed harmless at first, just another bureaucratic nuisance he could sweep under the rug, until the media got hold of it. News stations ran headline after headline. Judge Whitmore accused of systemic bias in courtroom. Families of wrongfully convicted seek justice. Former defendant speaks out. He destroyed my life. One by one, the people he had wronged stepped forward. Former defendants, attorneys, even courthouse staff, each with a story of how Judge Whitmore had twisted justice for his own prejudices. Michael Carter became the face of the movement. He stood before flashing cameras, his voice calm but resolute. Judge Whitmore stole years of my life. He believed himself untouchable. But no one, not even a judge, is above the law. Whitmore watched the press conference from his lavish study, a glass of whiskey trembling in his hand. Michael should have been broken, destroyed. He should have become just another statistic, another victim swallowed by the system. But he wasn't. He was rising, and Whitmore was sinking. The second blow came from within his own circle. The same politicians and powerful figures who had once protected him began to distance themselves. Judges who had once called him a friend refused to return his calls. The district attorney's office, where he had countless allies, suddenly had no comment on his situation. And then came the worst betrayal of all. His own clerk, Daniel Foster, turned against him. Daniel had worked under Judge Whitmore for nearly a decade, a loyal assistant, always ensuring that the judge's questionable rulings went unchallenged. But loyalty had its limits. When questioned by investigators, Daniel spilled everything. He handed over years' worth of internal memos, personal emails, even transcripts that had been altered to ensure harsher sentences for Black and Latino defendants. The evidence was damning. Within days, the State Judicial Commission announced its findings. Judge Gerald Whitmore was officially under investigation for corruption, abuse of power, and racial bias. The very courtroom where he had once ruled with an iron fist now whispered his name with contempt. And the whispers grew louder every day. A night of reckoning. Judge Whitmore stopped going out in public. His once flawless reputation was now a stain he could never erase. Protesters gathered outside his house, chanting his name like a curse. "We want justice! Lock him up! No more racist judges!" The walls of his mansion seemed to close in on him. He barely slept, haunted by the ghosts of his own rulings. And then, one night, everything changed. It was past midnight when the sound of glass shattering jolted him awake. He shot up in bed, heart pounding. He reached for the gun in his bedside drawer, his fingers slick with sweat. Then he heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate. Someone was in the house. He crept down the stairs, his breath coming in shallow gasps. His hands trembled as he gripped the gun, his once steady fingers betraying him. And then he saw him. Michael Carter, standing in the middle of his living room. The judge raised his gun. "How the hell did you get in here?" Michael didn't